Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm very excited. You're probably expecting Georgie's face and realising that this face is not Georgie's. Unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, George is not available this morning. So I have jumped in for a fantastic and lovely chat with the lovely Gina, and I'm so excited to find out a little bit more about your story and get to know you a little bit more. So it's going to be fab. Anybody who is joining us, we will just kind of chat for a little bit while people join. But if you do have questions, then please do pop them in the comments, and I will ask Gina those questions. So do feel free to say good morning in the comments, to join in the conversation, and to ask us questions as we go along. So I'm going to say morning, Gina, but Gina's actually in Melbourne, so evening, Gina.
Thank you. Yes, it is 7 p.m. over here at the bottom end of the earth. And yes, I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and really happy to be here with you, Zoe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to share your story and tell us a little bit more about your journey with TMS and all of that. So let's start by kind of give us a little bit of background, give us a little bit of when did it start, what was going on, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, well, I recommend people bring a bit of a cut lunch because it feels like a long journey. So just to let you know, I'm now in my mid-40s and I'm a mum and I'm living in Melbourne and sort of been working and studying and all sorts of things. But my first bout of struggle with a sort of more chronic pain issue was really in my late teens and early 20s when I headed off to the Conservatorium of Music in Queensland to study cello as my undergraduate degree. And so I was heading for a performance music career. And that was a really great time, but pretty intense. And I started getting problems with my wrists. And I mean, just a lot of arm tension, neck tension, that kind of thing. But towards the end of my 4-year degree there, I started really struggling with more weakness than anything else, particularly in my, let me see, it was in my right hand, which I think is on the wrong side of the screen here, but yeah. And so that was, I saw a bunch of different people about that. I got RSI is what I was given the label, RSI, or tendonitis of the wrist and finger, or various overuse kind of labels. And I saw a physio, I took up swimming, I saw an osteopath, I saw an acupuncturist, I did a lot of Alexander technique, which is all about posture, and tried some Feldenkrais movement, and basically I then got a scholarship to move to Melbourne to do more study of music, and things were going really well, and I was getting some freelance orchestral playing work, but the wrist just was becoming more and more problematic. I couldn't really do more than an hour a day of practice. And sure. Yeah, so it was really troubling, and ultimately towards the end of that year I decided to give up the cello and to give up that career. So that was a really big heartbreak.
Yeah.
But it just got to the point. Yeah. And so I did that, and I just decided to go for resting at least taking a rest from the cello. I decided not to play. That was my strategy for avoiding pain, because largely it seemed to be playing the cello that was provoking it. And so then I was unsure what to do with my life, and I was unemployed for 6 months. And then I found an administrative job at the University of Melbourne, and I started having a typing job there, and I got some wrist issues, but it just didn't have the same weight of, to have to give up a job in typing didn't bother me so much. So I just kind of struggled on with it, and then I started getting migraine. So maybe,
It's all kind of moving around of symptoms.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and at this point in time, I hadn't heard anything to do with TMS. But I think maybe 2 years on from that. So I just had that, and I had a few other niggles here and there, and the wrist stuff would be on and off. But mostly I just tried to avoid things that exacerbated it. And then a friend got in touch, and he had also played the cello and had also had terrible RSI. And in fact, he'd had a much more dramatic story than me, and it ended up using voice-activated computer to do most of his next degree and couldn't use his arms at all. But he said, Gina, you must read this book. And it was John Sarno's Mindbody prescription, I think. And he knew me pretty well, and he said, I just think you'll really find yourself in the pages of this book. And I read that, and the penny dropped for me, because I recognised, just my personality in the pages of that
Read
book.
every page going, yes.
Yeah. Perfectionist, goodist. I was a very strong Christian at that time, and that was really part of my identity as well. So at this point, by the time I was reading this, I'd also stopped the admin and headed off to do a ministry study. So anyway, this book, it just revolutionized things for me, and I had a bit of a book cure. I read it. I thought, yes, this is my issue. I just need to believe it. Yeah. And I didn't see anyone or do anything with that. I just really trusted that, and I gradually, I picked up the cello again and just did little bits of playing. I did still, have a few hand and wrist things, I think, as I was studying. I was just so out of practice of playing a lot or whatever, but I knew it was just, I just knew to work with trusting that diagnosis was right, and not sort of going into a tailspin with it. And during that time, I also tried to share the book with a lot of people. And that had mixed success.
I was going to say, I bet some people loved it. Some people were like, what the hell, witchcraft, go away.
Exactly. So it was very much, and I found that quite challenging because I was so excited. I'd found such a relief and thought, no, this is the way. But then every time I saw anyone with an issue, I was like, well, you just must read this book. And some people read it and was like, yes, thank you, my knee problem's gone away, or I don't have to have my shoulder surgery. And other people were just incredibly angry. And so at that point, in some ways, my interest in this approach went underground because I was quite confronted by the anger. I remember particularly when I had a friend who had a very similar wrist issue with her violin playing. And I said to her, she was going through so much stress. And I thought, this book, and she was so upset that her love, her passion, the thing that she wanted to do was the thing that was being threatened.
Yeah.
Well, I gave her the book and I said, well, I had real success with this. But unfortunately, she'd actually had a cancer diagnosis and had gone through cancer. And she'd had too many people in that process tell her that her cancer was, due to her anger or something, and she just heard the same message. And so I really backed right off sharing anything to do with this and almost forgot about it for a while.
How was your sort of symptoms during that time? Would you say that they were better, or would you say it was kind of gone and you weren't thinking about it during that time?
Pretty much gone and not thinking about it. I did still have the odd migraine headache, but the frequency had really dropped off. And I just thought, this happens when I get, when I was studying and getting overly stressed about something, I could see the link. And so I just wasn't concerned that there was some bigger problem, I guess. And I didn't, so that was sort of my phase one. And so that was maybe late.
I feel there's a phase two coming.
Several more phases. Yeah, that was sort of like the first decade. And the whole thing just dropped off my radar, I'd have to say. And then it re-emerged very strongly. I had 3 children starting in 2007 with my first, and I had some bad postnatal anxiety and depression after the first, but I got help with that, and I managed on medications and good support from my husband. And after the birth of my third child, however, I'd had some pelvic instability in that pregnancy. And after the birth of my third child, that was 2011, I started having some real problems with pelvic pain. So shooting, like very incredibly painful shooting pains in my sort of pelvic region. And took the onset of that was about 3 months after having my daughter. And because I'd had this pelvic instability, and people just said, oh, well, the hormones are still there, and, but they should have gone by now. And I started looking on the internet about, pelvic instability.
We're going to die.
Yeah, I just started reading these horror stories of people who had, so I'd been given the label of symphysis pubis disorder. It's this idea that the sort of, the area, I'm not very technical with bones and such, but there's sort of a little bit of cartilage. It's sort of right at the front of the pubic bone, and the idea was that was somehow unstable. So just even the image of that was horrifying.
Your head is horrible.
Absolutely horrifying for me. And looking back, I can see I'd actually tried to start getting back into some running around the same time that this, and I don't think my body was quite ready, but I got in my head that I'd done some terrible damage, I think, to my to the pelvis in restarting running too early. And then I was reading about people ending up in wheelchairs with this condition, and I really, over the next 8 months, I got stiffer and sorer, and I'd start walking.
Protect it, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like when once you're there, it's like you suddenly start protecting it, and all of that is more tension and more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was because it was quite an excruciating, short, sharp pain that would just sort of spring up, and randomly, it was. I got very scared of walking, scared of lifting, and. So here I was, and I was seeing a physio, doing Pilates once a week. And seeing an osteo twice a week just for muscle release, and that was managing with that, but nothing was improving. And I was scared about where this was heading. And then, unsurprisingly, what was going on in the background was that we were part of what had turned out to be a bit of a blow up in a church community. And so
I was going to say, what's going on? What was?
I mean, quite apart from just having had a third child.
I was going to say, apart from the fact that you've just had a third child,
right?
A small baby in the house, and 2 other children to look after.
Exactly, it was horrifying, and so there was a lot of tension going on, and we were supporting some friends who had lost their jobs, and emotionally supporting, and stuck in the middle of a bit of a disagreement, really. And I just, because of my intense personality traits and like trying to keep people happy and I was very involved and invested in how it was all going, and I was really engrossed with it. And interestingly, another friend who was in a similar situation with me, she got a frozen shoulder throughout that. And I thought, well, I read about frozen shoulders in John Sarno's book, I think, and this clearly
correlate that to yourself.
Right? No, it did not occur to me because so I gave her this book, and as I did that, I thought, hang on, what is
yourself?
Right? But because I couldn't see anything about symphysis pubis disorder in John Sarno's writing, I wasn't sure, and because I'd had this pregnancy thing, I was like, no, this is this is structural. So I didn't have that sense of assurance. But what I did actually at that point in time is I started looking for other books, and I came across Howard Schubiner, and I actually wrote an email to Howard Schubiner, and I said, yeah, do you think this condition could possibly be mind-body syndrome?
What's his email? Yes.
Man, he wrote back. He said, I really do think so. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And within 2 weeks of receiving that email and just reading through the first part of Unlearn Your Pain, his book, again, a book cure, really. For this one, I had to do a little bit more exposure. I had to walk and overcome my fear of the shooting pains, and over a few days, those just dissipated. And then within a year, I started running, and I did get back into running, which was a great joy. And so that
takes quite a lot, doesn't it? When you've got physical pain, to say, I'm gonna move anyway, I'm gonna walk anyway, run anyway,
Yeah.
How did
I was so scared.
Face that?
Well, I was scared, but I knew that I'd done this before. And even though I thought, how can this shooting pain not be coming from something terribly wrong? Yeah. I just had to test it, and I started noticing the inconsistencies. Well, why isn't it shooting while I'm doing this, but shooting here? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I just had to gather that evidence. Yeah. And what I did too is at that point I realized, I can see the way that my sort of really unmanaged anxiety, or sort of just managed with a bit of medication and she'll be right. Yeah. I just thought I'd got so stressed over this community conflict, and I thought, I can't go on living like this. Otherwise my body will just continue to have these kinds of meltdowns. I'm going to, so at that point I thought, what I really need to do is address my underlying anxiety and sort of just really some really old patterns. So I did do the book cure, but then I took myself off to therapy, not with a TMS therapist. It just wasn't really anyone. Well, Hal Greenham, in fact, I'd also emailed him. He was living in Melbourne at the time, but in the end, we didn't get to connect. But I just took myself off to another psychologist to start looking at where have these patterns in myself come from. Yeah, because I knew that was really what this was all about.
It's interesting you say, isn't there? There's a difference between, like you say, reading a book and getting it, and actually kind of doing the work and sort of, looking at it and going, no, actually, I'm going to do the work so that then this doesn't keep coming back or keep recurring. Right. So, yeah, it's nice that you made that differentiation between the two. Is that a word?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think, I guess having had a few episodes quite a number of years apart, I then, and there is a phase 3, so I'll go into that as well.
Just while we're talking, if anybody does have any questions for Gina, do put them in the comments, and we will feed those into the chat. So feel free to ask your questions.
Absolutely, yeah.
So phase 2. You took yourself off and did some deeper work.
I think phase 2 showed me that I needed to head off and do the deeper work. And I think it was probably still another couple of years before I could really do that. I had to wait till my youngest was old enough for me to escape for an hour, or and just to have right. And we got ourselves out of the stressful community, but actually we landed in another stressful community. So what I noticed then was, I keep being drawn to these stressful, like,
doing this to myself.
Yeah, this is right. There's something I'm doing here to contribute. And yes, there's a way in which I take responsibility for conflict and for trying to keep the peace, and I could start to see the way that was playing in. So I started working with a psychologist, really lovely man who did help me to just start to examine what had been underlying. He didn't really, he wasn't into this idea of pain. I think he even had his own back thing. So I didn't really, again, talk to him about that. But I had the postnatal depression and anxiety that I was sort of more looking at, which I now see as all part of the same, just really tightly wound nervous system. Yeah. And phase 3, this is what I call my whack-a-mole phase. Because, it just, and I think, for a lot of people who've been around the TMS block for a while, first of all, there's the big cure from something, and then there's maybe something else pops up, but then you cure that. And then there's I've just got this niggle and that niggle, and then this niggle over here. So this is probably going hand in hand with working on my underlying issues, but I'd also got much more enthusiastically into my running at this point, which I didn't grow up running. I was decidedly non-sporty. So this was a kind of new phase for me. But of course, with those sort of perfectionist and sort of somewhat self-competitive driven traits, what started emerging in this was my self-pressuring tendencies. So during probably have to say from maybe 2015 to 2017, I just had a series of, first I strained a calf muscle, and then as I was training for a particular hilly trail run, and then I got some plantar fasciitis issues that just wouldn't go away. And then I got a Morton's neuroma, which is a funny lump on the foot. And then I had Achilles things, and they were all just dragging on acute things, and they all seemed to tie into running, or, and if I was in part of park run, and I was trained for a half marathon and did all sorts of things.
Did you just put it down to part of the running then?
Totally. And I mean, people in these communities love to talk about their injuries too. I mean, there's a lot of, if someone turns up and they've got plantar fascia again, and there's you're not
in a club unless you're somehow injured.
Totally. And there's a lot of obsession about running form. Oh, you're a 4-foot runner, or you're back, you're a mid-foot striker, or so you could I did get a little bit into some of that. Now, thankfully, during that time, I also found an osteopath who was very familiar with Lorimer Mosley's work. So Lorimer Mosley, and so I don't know if you know the Explain Pain people. So so they're Australian pain researchers, and what they really understand is pain as a protector and the role of the brain in sort of amplifying pain signals. And so this osteopath, although he probably wouldn't go all the way to the kind of Sarno or Shubina approach, was exceedingly helpful in just helping me avoid really chronic expressions. So he just helped me regain confidence in my tissues, basically, and not overblow the role of, he'd just suggest, just knock it back a little bit. Right. Yeah, just knock your running experiment. We'll knock it down for a bit, then we'll just build up. But he wasn't blaming my shoe or leg length or, and so that was just, and I explained to him my understanding of these things, and I started sharing books with him. And so finally I found someone I could talk to about this, and he shared books with me. So this reignited my interest in this style of approaching pain and stress illnesses. And I recognise how much the science had come along as well, and the neuroscience.
That's one of the things I say about people. A lot of people still get into this through the Dr. Sarno books. And I often say to them, they were written now, like 15, 20 years ago.
25 even, some of them. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think on one hand, they're incredibly good, but on the other hand, we've come so far since then.
Yeah.
That some of the advice that he gives in that book, we wouldn't give now. So
right.
It's just, there's so much more in-depth research and understanding than there was then. So I think there's still brilliant books and there's still, fantastic reads, but read some of the new stuff.
Absolutely.
As well as that, definitely.
Yeah. I found it so helpful to grapple with a bit more of the science, and to feel that this people are beginning to explain some of the mechanisms behind what's going on here, and I mean just our understandings of how the brain and the nervous system and the body are all connected, intertwined, is so much richer now, and so that has really helped. And what I noticed during this period, and I'll say, of course, I'm a human, I still get the odd niggle here and there, but what I don't have is, I don't go down a rabbit hole of wondering what terrible fate is going to befall me. I just take it as a cue to look at, how have I been pushing? What part of myself have I ticked off recently?
What am I doing to myself at the minute? Being really harsh, being really
right, exactly.
All this stuff is going on, and I just completely ignored the fact that might have an impact on me. Exactly.
I think, and I'd say in the last few years, particularly because I also then I moved to trying a different form of therapy, a type of Gestalt psychotherapy, which I'm now training in, and that somehow in that, instead, I before that I was having a really I cognitively understood how my personality sort of structure worked, but with this style of therapy, I've really begun to unpack and tease apart more of just to understand parts of myself, and to sort of get, yes, this part of myself that needs to please, or this part of myself that really wants to drive me, sort of have more affection towards them and more understanding of why they've come about and what they're trying to do for me. And so as I've become more familiar with just parts of myself and have been able to work more compassionately with them, I've just noticed I can turn issues around a lot more quickly. You've
achieved some amazing things, and sort of as a result, tell us a little bit around kind of what you've done now.
What I'm doing now?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I went and did three or so years of regular psychology, which was really fantastic, and then I felt pretty good, and I just went and had a break from that. And then I think it was end of maybe 2017. During this time, I'd been editing books. I ended up being a book editor somewhere in there. I don't really know how that happened. It's a bit of a blur. Anyway, and I got to the end of 2017, and I'd actually written a book for someone. I wrote a book on behalf of someone else. It's called Ghostwriting, for an entrepreneur who just couldn't quite find the time to write his own book. But and that, I mean, that was an incredible thrill on one level, but actually it just I just burnt myself out, and I was exhausted. And I just turned 40, and I thought, why am I writing this thing on behalf of someone, writing things I don't believe in, and I want to be doing something that's really meaningful for me in my life. So I think at this point, I'd got to the point where my youngest child was 7. There's a bit more space opening up in our life, and I thought, it's time for me to go and explore who I want to be and what I want to do. And so then I went to have some really careers counselling is I thought what I was going for. and it just ended up being a really much deeper, very rich therapeutic experience, in which I kind of also I've had a crisis of faith, and my whole understanding of the world shifted and changed. And in some ways that also let go some of those really, I guess some of those more rigid parts of myself that had been formed in my early childhood or adulthood, were just able to loosen a little. And I just felt in this process I've had quite a shift in my nature. My whole, I get patches of anxiety. Like I accept that being a human is going to involve uncertainty, and anxiety. But there's sort of a sense of openness and a sense of adventure. It's almost like I can be excited rather than just terrified. Yeah, and so it's quite. I thought, what is this magic? How is sitting in a room with this person, exploring things, and some of it was somatic exploration, so not just talking, but how is this transforming my, nervous system is what it seemed to be going on. So, of course, I had to go off and investigate that, and ended up, I'm now studying, I'm almost into my 4th year of my Gestalt studies, but I've done a number of other trainings as well. And I have just found so much joy in that process. And as I've gone, I've just, I guess, become kinder and kinder to myself. I think that's really been the key. So I still very much have driven parts and perfectionist tendencies that pop up. And
so you're not going to wake up tomorrow a different person, are we?
No, definitely not. And I'm grateful for that.
I was going to say, they're not necessarily a bad thing, are they?
No, right. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't be able to get through the things that I do get through, and, set my sights on new learnings and adventures. But I just don't tend to get stuck in things as much. Yeah. So, and with that, I really haven't had, I do still run, but I did back off. What I realized is I'd pushed myself. I'd kind of got my, probably got my, PB in my 5K, and I got my PB in my half marathon. I don't want to do a full marathon. That's just a bit beyond my enthusiasm level. And then I was just finding, I think, this sense of that I should be pushing further. And then a part of me that actually didn't want to and just wanted to have fun. I think that was part of why I kept getting injuries, really. I can look at that time and go, I just wasn't listening. I got on my narrow, focused, rigid, must accomplish, must better myself kind of path. And probably a young child part in me is probably just saying, oh, can we just relax a bit, and
can we please not?
How could we do some dancing maybe? Yeah. So just trying to learn to, I still sometimes I go for a run, and sometimes I feel like I'm dragging 2 children behind me. One child is my this little taskmaster, and the other one is, I don't want to, someone sitting there sticking their thumb. So sometimes I feel like I'm still negotiating with different aspects of myself.
Do you think that'd ever end? Do you think it's possible?
I think not. I think this is part of being human, right? I do think, I'd say there are certain things that really have just ceased to be a battleground for me. And there are other things where, that I can still feel there's a little bit of, there's probably more work to do. And But again, I'm not on that aggressive self-healing path either.
I think instead there's a curiosity of humanity to
yeah,
it. Quite curious of these parts and what's going on, but not fighting it and thinking either you have to do something or should do something. We've had a comment from Lizzie. Hi, Lizzie. She's got always an interesting question. Should I do more or what do I need? I think that's so true. So true.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is, and sometimes I find it's like I have to sit down with myself and have a little conference.
Yeah.
Just have a real listen in. Okay. Oh, this part of myself thinks I need X, Y, Z, but actually there are several other opinions going on as well. And
I think it's understanding that none of those pieces are potentially wrong or right. There's just a discussion.
Right. Yeah.
And it's almost like if you have the discussion, then you can come to a agreed solution. Yeah. But otherwise, you end up, like you say, going running, and you're having this argument going on with yourself.
Right. Well, even just this morning, again, I realised one of the things I need to do is just mix things up a little bit. So I've been because a part of me really loves to have routine, and I hit on a routine, and then like this part is like, great, that's what we're doing for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Doesn't want me to deviate. Whereas this morning I realised, I've been running 3 times a week, and but I notice I'm really dragging my feet with the longer runs. Maybe I need to just change it up and do 5 shorter runs for a little while. And I'm also allowed to not run. I've done patches of that too. I've trained. I'm a qigong instructor, so I do. I don't teach anyone, but I've trained in that, and I do that. And when it wasn't COVID, just before COVID hit, I'd started doing going to 5 rhythms, which is a kind of freeform dance process, which is quite out there for me. But
But sometimes we are drawn to what keeps us out of balance.
I'd love to hear more about that.
I'd love to hear more.
Feel free to say more, Lizzie.
Yeah. Say more. Join me.
Yeah, I certainly think there are parts of me that love to live in, drama. I'm just laughing about it now too, because I'm even like, oh. Yeah. And it's
something like it's the whole kind of do we do what's good for us? There's a part of us that knows that something's good for us or something's not good for us, but how does that translate into action of actually changing that or making a decision not to do something? And I think that whenever I've spoken to clients and people about it, and obviously tell me your point of view as well, is I think there's still a reason to do it. And I think that's the listening in part of saying there's still a part of you that gets some benefit or joy or something out of the thing that you're doing. I think people are very harsh with themselves, and then they just kind of force themselves, say, no, you shouldn't eat the cake, don't eat the cake. And it's a bit like, there's a part of you that's like, you are being so harsh. And actually, I just want to eat the damn cake. So I'm going to eat it anyway.
Yeah. Well, in Gestalt, we have we do look a lot at polarizations, and internal family systems is great too for this, which I'm training in next because I'm a junkie. But
you've been SIRPA training as well, haven't you?
I have done. I am a SIRPA trained practitioner, which is wonderful. I really, really love it. I just can't stop because I wasn't thinking. I will come back to what I was saying, but I was just going to say when I got into training for psychotherapy, I wasn't thinking about applying it again to chronic pain. But then there has suddenly been an explosion of interest, and I can really see that this is an area where you want people who have an understanding of what's going on there.
It dovetails so nicely.
Beautifully, yeah. So it's definitely one of my focus areas, and I'm already starting to work with some people in that.
Polarizations.
Yes, polarizations. So in Gestalt, it's the idea is, you know, we just don't want to be stuck out on those edges of, you know, the black and white. In Gestalt, that what the idea of health is to be flexible and have choice. And so for me, yes, it's so much less about what am I choosing, but the manner in which I'm choosing it now. You know, am I choosing this in a kind of self-punishing or rigid way, or is there can I just have a light touch with it, and can I experiment? What if we just experiment and see how it goes for 2 weeks? So I just try to soften the edge of that.
And like a lot of chronic pain comes from that rigidity,
mm-hmm.
that control and rigidity, and those, like you say, those having to do something or should do something, or
and staying in constant uncertainty about whether we've choosing the right thing. Yeah, so just moving away and allowing myself to not know what the right thing is. I don't always know. I don't know what the right balance is. I don't know how much cake is good for me. Like, I just try to, and sometimes I do have those polarizations in mind, and I try to negotiate between them as a kind of sort of the curious part of myself can sit and consult with both, and to say you're both important. You both actually have a point of view. Yeah.
A very valid one.
Yes.
Very valid one. Like I say, it's getting away from you are right and you are wrong, or this bit's right or this bit's wrong. And like you say, getting into what's your opinion? Well, what's your opinion? Like you say, you're having a bit of committee meeting.
Yeah. And if everyone's thinking we're a bit strange at this point, I'm okay with that.
We've not lost the plot, I promise. This is recognizing that, like the seasons, everything is always changing. Love it.
Beautiful.
Love it.
Yeah.
If we can enjoy each one as well as it comes, they're just different. And if we can, using that sort of metaphor and analogy, if we can let those seasons change and enjoy each one for what it brings, then it leads us to a lot more of a healthier, happier place.
There's a lot of wisdom in that, and in understanding things as cyclical rather than linear all the time.
But moving from inertia to overly active and always trying to find equilibrium. Sorry, hard to participate easily via text. You're doing very well, Lizzie. You're doing very well.
Yeah.
Really good there.
Yeah. Yes, the inertia to movement. It is tricky, and again, I do see this a lot in sort of TMS communities. Is people either really underdoing it out of a protective response, or really overdoing it out of that, the aggressive healer. I really started to notice my own aggressive healing part, and how that wasn't serving me, particularly, I think even particularly in phase 3, where I would know, oh, well, calf strain, I'm sure this is TMS. And so I would try to push. And it was actually my osteo who helped me just soften a little, even though in the end, most of my issues, there was really no precipitating injury. They did kind of come out of the blue, even though there was tissue change, and, it was just incredible what my brain could produce out of a sense of threat and self-pressured, I
don't think people realise how powerful their brain is. They don't realise that it is powerful enough to create such changes. That they sort of think, oh, if it's that incredible a change, it must be a physical injury, because they just realise that the brain is so powerful. Yeah.
Well, I mean, one thing that just sometimes you've got to have a weird experience to really cement this in. But I did a training with Howard Schubiner, just because, you know, I have to have done all the trainings. But
and, Gina.
Yes, exactly. And we were talking about, I think it was compartment syndrome, and how, you know, whether a non-injured tissue could swell or produce swelling. And during the discussion, I walked out to the kitchen, and one of my toes was swollen and bruised. Like completely out of the blue. I did not knock it on anything. It really was incredible. And I just kind of laughed. I shared it with the group, and I think that was just, sometimes I have gone, oh, but this is, you know, the ultrasound showed a bit of swelling there was a inflammation response with the plantar fasciitis. It must be a real thing. Yeah, of course it's a real thing. It is a real thing, but it's not caused by poor footwear. It was caused by, signals from
I think there's a balance. So for me, I still merit, you know, there's still a place for doctors, hospitals. Absolutely, you know, go and get those checked out. But for me, I go with this opinion of, if you're telling me something that is, I go with the TMS head. So I had an issue with my eyes, and I was like, I still need to get my eyes checked. But when I went, they weren't telling me anything that was a structural thing. So then I walked out going, okay, well, now I'm just going to delve into my TMS toolkit, because you know, there's no kind of huge issue that they were talking about. But they do like to give you a name for something. You know, they might say, oh, well, you've got such a syndrome. And my little TMS brain is always like, does that mean that there's something actually, or is that a brain body thing? And then I come out and kind of delve into the TMS toolkit and ask myself questions like, what's going on in my life? What am I doing? Mine is similar to yours. What am I doing to myself? And go down that route.
Definitely. I always, I mean, particularly where, you know, you're running or being active, or there seems to be some precipitating event or injury, my approach is, we'll just treat this as an acute issue. So you back off for a bit. I mean, I often see this again. I'm part of several groups just as a member, and, you know, people are, oh, yesterday I got this thing. Is it TMS? And probably, given you're in the board, but maybe we could just give it 2 weeks and let it, you know, we will be in pain. We're humans. We're going to get injuries. And even if that injury is TMS, well, just give it some space, because in general, if there's something coming up, it does mean a part of me needs me to back off. Now, if that part of me ends up sabotaging everything for 6 months, well, then we've got an issue. But if that part of me just needs to chill for 2 weeks while we just modify things and then reintroduce, then no one's lost. So, and it's this catastrophizing that I used to do a lot of, well, this is going to be forever, and, you know, or I've had to change my running program, and just to go, it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, we're just too invested, I think, and just too harsh and too expectant. When we add in this layer, I love it. I'm just going to read something from Jenny, actually, because it fits perfectly. She's just put, loving this conversation and that beautiful image of dragging 2 children with me by Gina. Ancient wisdom always refers to the quantities of water and going with flow. I would also add the value of curiosity. And I just thought, sorry, I think the conversation's probably moved on and I can't type quick enough.
No, that's so beautiful.
I love that value of curiosity and the importance that brings to what we're doing, instead of the harshness, like you said, of is this injury a physical injury? Is it TMS? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? There's just so much rigidity and harshness to it. Where when we add in kindness, humanity, and curiosity, it comes from a completely different place.
It really does.
Yeah.
And I find this same as I start working with clients, and particularly in my Gestalt clinic, where I'm usually seeing people who've really had a rough trot and often with quite a bit of trauma. There's so much harshness in anyone's system, and part of my role I just see is just holding that kindness out, and that in itself can just gradually sort of tap into, there is an innate kindness in everyone that just can get piled over, I think, by all our really hardworking little parts. And just how far just a bit of curiosity, a bit of kindness, a bit of ease can go. And that, to me, that's what therapy is. It's like helping people befriend themselves. And I think, that we want to do that with our chronic pain situations. We want to do it with our anxiety, depression.
If you could give that teenage Gina, like, your words of wisdom, your nuggets of advice, kind of, what would they be? What would you say? What would your nuggets of wisdom be?
Yeah, she was so anxious. She was so contracted, and I just would really want to go and soothe that a little and say, you're okay, and you will be okay, and these decisions they aren't the life or death decisions that they feel like they are to you. Now, I have to communicate that in a way that's not dismissive to it.
How do you feel now you've got teenagers now?
Yeah. Right, exactly. So there's, again, just to enjoy, I would just want to communicate some sense of, find some stuff that you enjoy right now, and maybe just help her to orient to pleasure a little bit more, even just in that time. And I don't regret giving up music. Ultimately, I can see that really in the end I was conflicted about that career, and in some ways the pain situation gave me an opportunity to stop. So that's how I view it and understand it now. Even though I was at the height of I was doing really well. Things were going very well for me. So it seemed like a bit of a tragedy. But I think because I was going well, I didn't know how to say to myself, I don't think this is what I want.
Yeah.
And that was after people had poured money and effort and time into me. And
that makes it harder, doesn't it? So
really
much harder.
Yeah. And but I don't regret that. And so probably that young me just needed to know how to listen into what she wanted, and to trust that a little more too, and to not worry about letting other people down quite so much. That was the big fear. Yeah.
Would you do music now for pleasure?
Yes, I do. In fact, when in non-COVID times, I'm in a terribly daggy little duo, and I have a music partner. He sings and plays acoustic guitar, and I play cello, and we do 80s covers. It's fabulous.
This sounds awesome. This sounds so much better than a degree.
Totally. You can have your
80s tunes.
Right, definitely. Bit of exactly. It's very fun. Acoustic versions.
It's so nice that it's still in your life.
It is.
And that you've managed to find peace with it, which is so lovely.
Yeah, it is. And it's not in my life as much as I would think, but I guess in the end, so much of why I did it was to please, and because that's what I was told I was good at. And
were you told that you were good at it from an early age?
Yeah, and I was. I did do well, but I thought that's all I could do, which is funny. It's interesting. Yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting with the last the impact of the last sort of 18 months or so on our young people, because before that there was such a demand on your school and what you were doing and your academics and things, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, actually we've all just kind of had this year and a half, like I'm hoping that it'll make some young people maybe a little less feeling like they've got to do things a certain way, or that things matter as much as they used to matter, and a bit of a reframing of it really. But then it's going to be interesting to see what impact that has down the lines. What's your kind of feelings of having three children?
Yeah, so I have two boys in high school, 14 and almost 13-year-old boys, and I mean and my daughter who's in year 5, so she's 10, and I mean we've been very low key with our expectations. I've almost gone the opposite way, probably too far in some ways. That
polarization we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of I think the indulgent part of me is running the household at the moment. But for example, my kids, they've all got hoodies. Do you know these big, terrible, oversized dressing gown kinds of things? And basically, I mean, they've been homeschooling for months, and I decided last week we were just going to set the bar a bit higher, and that they all had to put clothes on underneath their hoodies for their school day. So, I mean, this is the high level of expectation we're rolling with right now. But for me, I know I can see that my kids flourish when they are happy and feel supported, and that their interests emerge and their capacity to learn is higher, when they're feeling appreciated for who they are. So that's what
Isn't that true for all humans?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not so worried. I mean, I've had such a windy path to land at what I feel like is really my heart work for my vocation, and hopefully they'll get there a little faster than I did, but I don't necessarily expect them to have sorted things out through schooling. I think if they can basically communicate, read, write, stay alive, have some social interaction, and know that they're loved, that's really...
Jobs are good. Yeah, I think it's I think so many good points coming out of this conversation, and I love the fact that the story that you're telling is in phases, because so many people think that they've got to answer it the first time. They've got to get it right the first time. And I think it's so nice to hear a story that's like, no, actually, it's a learning journey, and it can happen over years, and nothing of huge detriment happens because of that length of journey. You just get at the pace that you need to take it. So yeah.
In some ways, I sense, as I head into working with people on this path, is that I'm really going to be there for the veteran TMSs who are feeling like a failure, that they haven't completely managed to get rid of X, Y, or Z.
It ties in lovely. Lizzie's like, she's just in there. But what advice would you give to someone who's in relapse? How perfect is that question?
Say, welcome to the club. You're not a failure. Just find some people who will gently work with you. And I think so much of it is about finding a sort of a gentleness and that curiosity, and being open to learning what this relapse is about for you, being open to learning the wisdom of it, and trusting that there is something that you can learn from it. But gentleness is my primary, self-compassion is my primary piece of advice. You're doing it tough.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We have hit 11 o'clock, so I will end it there so people can continue with their day. Gina, thank you so much for joining me. I think that has been an amazing chat. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zoe.